She was just 7 years old, doing something as innocent as delivering cookies, when her life was stolen by someone the whole neighborhood trusted. What followed was a tragedy so shocking, so heartbreaking, it would haunt her community for decades and spark changes in the law itself. This is not just another true crime story. It's one of the most powerful, chilling, and unforgettable cases you will ever hear. If there's only one story you watch today, let it be this one. The last cookie delivery. Joan D'Alessandro was the kind of child people in Hillsdale, New Jersey, never forgot. Born on September 7th, 1965, she was the youngest in a devout, close-knit family, with 2 protective older brothers and parents who adored her. Their quiet suburban street felt safe, almost immune to the troubles of the outside world. Joan thrived here. She loved ballet, excelled in school, and threw herself into the Girl Scouts, where she'd learned everything from tying knots to selling cookies door to door. On April 19th, 1973, Clean Thursday, her Baptist school was closed for the holiday. The spring air was mild, the neighborhood peaceful. 7-year-old Joan spent most of the day outside, playing in the yard while her mother kept watch from the house. By afternoon, only a few boxes of pre-ordered cookies remained to deliver. Around 3 p.m., Joan spotted a neighbor pulling into their driveway. Without hesitation, she darted inside, grabbed the last boxes, and told her mom she'd be back in just a few minutes. Those few minutes never came. At first, her mother thought little of the delay. It was common for kids in Hillsdale to wander between yards, stopping to play with friends before heading home. But as the hour passed, unease began to creep in. Rain rolled in briefly, and she assumed Joan might be waiting it out at a neighbor's house. The rain stopped. Joan didn't come back. By the time Joan's father returned from work, her mother's unease had hardened into dread. He jumped into his car, driving street after street, scanning sidewalks, yards, and driveways for any sign of their little girl. Nothing. Frantic, her mother tried to piece together where Joan might have gone. The delivery list she'd been using was nowhere to be found, likely taken with her. But one detail stuck in her mind. Joan had mentioned that the customer she was heading to had just pulled into their driveway in a new car. That narrowed it down. Only one family nearby had recently bought a vehicle. While her husband kept searching, Joan's mother knocked on their door, and then several others. Each neighbor she spoke to shook their head. No one had seen Joan that day. She returned home, empty-handed and terrified. When her husband confirmed he'd found nothing either, the awful truth sank in. They picked up the phone and called the police. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your support means a lot to us and helps us grow. A huge thank you to everyone who's been watching. The search that consumed a town. The moment officers heard Joan's mother's story, they knew every second mattered. They mobilized instantly, launching a massive search effort that pulled in not only the local police but the fire department as well. Crews fanned out across the neighborhood, while officers went door to door, expanding their sweep to a radius of several miles. No one had seen Joan. It was strange, unnerving. The street leading from her home connected directly to a busy shopping center. Cars passed through constantly. Yet somehow, not a single driver or pedestrian recalled seeing a small girl carrying boxes of cookies. As word spread, the quiet suburb transformed. Dozens of residents, friends, neighbors, people who barely knew the family, showed up to help. With each passing hour, the number of searchers swelled. By midnight, the urgency reached higher authorities. The FBI and state police were called in. Search dogs followed Joan's scent from her belongings. but the trail went cold almost immediately. Volunteers scoured abandoned buildings, wooded areas, empty houses, parks, and the lakeshore. Nothing. By the early hours of the morning, the idea that Joan had simply wandered off seemed impossible. She knew her neighborhood, she never strayed without permission, and she had promised to be back in just minutes. Her mother was certain this was no accident. At 3 a.m., exhausted crews paused, planning to resume at first light. When dawn broke, the search became even bigger. It felt like the whole town had turned out. Mothers who couldn't leave their children at home cooked more than 2,000 meals for those in the field. Nearly every local police officer joined in, along with 250 firefighters from surrounding towns and multiple FBI teams. They checked everything, every house, every yard, every garage and shed. They combed through brush, fields, and culverts. Still, Joan was nowhere. Then, finally, a flicker of hope. Less than a mile from Joan's home, a searcher spotted a small shoe. Nearby lay several empty boxes of the same cookies Joan had been delivering. Police hurried the shoe to Joan's mother, but her answer was immediate and certain. It wasn't Joan's. Investigators soon determined the cookie boxes had been there for weeks, weathered and forgotten. Later that day, local parents identified the shoe. It belonged to their child. Just like that, the lead collapsed. And as darkness fell once more, searchers were back where they started. Nowhere. By now, the FBI was leaning hard toward foul play. Joan's mother had already visited every house where her daughter might have delivered cookies. Not one neighbor had seen her or the cookies anywhere. But she had a hunch. Before Joan left that afternoon, she'd mentioned her next delivery was to a neighbor who had just pulled into their driveway in a brand new car. Only one household in the neighborhood fit that description, the McGowans. So Joan's mother went straight there. Answering the door was 26-year-old Joseph McGowan, who lived with his mother and grandmother. He said he hadn't seen Joan, but something about him unsettled her. She couldn't explain why, just that her gut told her something wasn't right. Detectives had already spoken to Joseph, and he denied everything. But his alibi was shaky. He stumbled over the details, contradicting himself in small but telling ways. On paper, though, Joseph didn't look like a suspect. He had no criminal record, a job as a high school chemistry teacher, and a spotless reputation in the community. Still, the uneasy feeling among investigators only grew. They decided to bring him in for a polygraph test. Joseph agreed. The results were damning. On nearly every crucial question, the operator flagged signs of deception. The police couldn't use it in court, but they could use it as leverage. They told him he'd failed and pushed harder. Hours later, Joseph cracked in a way no one expected. He asked to see a priest. After a private conversation, Joseph came back and began to confess. He said he'd been mowing his lawn when Joan walked up with the last of her cookie orders. He invited her inside to pay for them. Cookies, he claimed, that he'd ordered weeks before. Then his story veered into the bizarre. Joseph said he suddenly realized he didn't have the right change, and that this inexplicably sent him into a spiral. In what he described as a moment of shame and frustration, he grabbed Joan, dragged her to his bedroom, and began striking her. What followed were acts so disturbing, detectives struggled to keep their composure as they listened. They didn't believe his reason for a second, but they let him keep talking. The murder and the mask he wore. When the violence was over, Joseph McGowan was faced with the reality of what he had done and the fear of what came next. He later claimed panic set in. If he let Joan go, his life would be over. So he made a choice that would seal his fate forever. After several failed attempts, Joseph killed the 7-year-old girl. He wrapped her small body in an old sofa cover and carried it to the trunk of his car. Back inside, he scrubbed away the blood in his bedroom, stuffing the rags into a bag. Then he drove 20 miles into New York State, heading for a national park. Once there, he carried Joan into a remote stretch of woods and placed her behind a large rock. On his way home, he scattered the incriminating evidence, rags, cleaning supplies, into random trash bins along the route. By the time he returned, Joan's mother was already knocking on his door, searching for her daughter. He feigned ignorance. Hours later, he even joined the search efforts, walking alongside neighbors and police, knowing exactly where she was. When his confession came, Joseph shared something that made even seasoned investigators shudder. Despite the brutality of his actions, he'd been completely calm that night and slept soundly. Still, detectives focused on finding Joan. Joseph provided detailed directions to the hiding place, and within an hour, searchers located her body exactly as described, behind a rock in the park's dense woods. The autopsy exposed the lies in Joseph's account. He denied sexually assaulting Joan, but the forensic evidence was conclusive. She had suffered multiple injuries and bruises, and while his description of the cause of death matched reality, the state of her body told a darker truth. Joan had been found completely unclothed, yet Joseph stubbornly denied the assault even when confronted with this fact. For those who knew him, the revelations were almost impossible to process. Friends, family, and colleagues described him as a well-educated, respected chemistry teacher. Parents had trusted him with their children. Now the mask had been ripped away. Hillsdale itself was in shock. Crowds gathered outside the McGowan home in the days after his arrest. Most stood quietly, but police barricaded the street, fearing someone might lash out at his mother or grandmother. Some residents were so enraged, they began flipping through phone books, cold calling strangers with the same last name to vent their fury. The harassment became so relentless that several innocent families lodged formal complaints. The quiet suburban peace was gone. In its place was grief, rage, and the chilling knowledge that a predator had been living in their midst all along. From bail to a battle for justice, the anger in Hillsdale reached a fever pitch when news broke that the judge had set Joseph McGowan's bail at $50,000. For 1973, it was an enormous sum. But for Joan de Alessandro's devastated community, the number wasn't the issue. The thought of him walking free, even temporarily, and living just a few houses away from the family he had destroyed was unthinkable. Hundreds of residents flooded the courthouse with letters demanding the bail be revoked. Some were fueled by fear, others by rage, and not all of them wanted him kept inside for the court's sake. Some wanted him out so they could take justice into their own hands. Under immense public pressure, the court reversed its decision and revoked bail altogether, even though Joseph's family had already scraped together the full amount. He would remain behind bars until trial, kept in solitary confinement for his own safety. Other inmates had made it clear they wanted a chance at him. Months later, the trial began. Joseph pled guilty to Joan's murder, but continued to deny any sexual assault, portraying the killing as a sudden, inexplicable act. "I don't know what came over me," he told the court. The prosecution wasn't buying it. Psychiatrists who examined him painted a far darker picture. Their evaluations revealed a man who had harbored deviant fantasies for years, hiding behind a facade of respectability as a teacher and neighbor. The moment an opportunity presented itself, they said, he acted without hesitation. Investigators also doubted Joseph's claim that the crime was unplanned. The remote rock formation where he hid Joan's body felt too specific, too deliberate to be chosen in a panic. They suspected he had known about the spot long before and had it in mind as a disposal site. In the end, Joseph was sentenced to life in prison. But there was a catch. Under the law at the time, even someone convicted of murdering a child could still be eligible for parole. Nearly 20 years later, that nightmare became reality. Joseph applied for parole, shocking Joan's family, who hadn't even realized it was possible. Their lawyer warned that if they didn't actively oppose it, there was a very real chance Joseph would walk free. It was a terrifying prospect, especially since prison psychiatrists now described him as no longer a threat and pointed to his spotless prison record as evidence he could re-enter society. Joan's mother refused to accept it. She launched a relentless campaign, not only to keep Joseph behind bars, but to change the law itself. For years, she lobbied, testified, and fought to make sure that no family would face the same risk again. Her determination paid off. New Jersey passed a law making anyone convicted of murdering a child under 14 in the course of a sexual assault permanently ineligible for parole. Just a year later, thanks in large part to her tireless work, a federal version of the law passed as well. What began as a mother's fight to protect her daughter's memory became a nationwide safeguard, ensuring that predators like Joseph McGowan would never again walk free. A mother's legacy. Joan's mother never stopped fighting. In the years after McGowan's death, she continued to push for stronger protections for children. She succeeded in raising the age limit in her original law from 14 to 18 in New Jersey. She also helped pass legislation eliminating the statute of limitations for murder in the state. She founded a nonprofit dedicated to protecting children, an organization that has saved countless young lives. Every action she takes, she says, is to honor Joan's memory and ensure that no other family endures the same nightmare. Be sure to let us know what you think of the story in the comments below. And if you like this video, smash the like button and don't forget to subscribe. A playlist is going to pop up right now with more videos you'll love. See you guys next time.